Hello Yu-Gi-Oh players and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0, and yes, as I'm sure many of you noticed from the length and title of this video, and have been shocked and some amazed and more terrified, I am in fact doing a full-length show today. Recently I haven't had the ability to do so because, well, I've been very busy and you guys aren't exactly at the top of my priority list. Okay, I'm kidding, but unless Matt Smith showed up in a big blue box and suddenly took up an interest in Yu-Gi-Tubing, I think it would be highly unlikely that I would have been able to get a full-length show in any time in the last few weeks. However, today I have quite a bit of extra spare time, so guess what? You are stuck with me for the next 15 or 20 minutes. Strap yourselves in. Let's get down to today's show. Today I am going to be talking about Elemental Dragons, continuing my little Taking Down the Top Tier series on the current meta in 2013, and then I'm going to be moving on to one of my favorite subjects of all time, rogue deck theory, and then why, well, butter my butt and call me kinky, rogue decks are actually pretty good this format. So, first, the channel update that I think I talked about just now, but I probably forgot about it, so guess what, you guys are going to have to sit through that too. So, as I'm sure that a few of you have been following, I have recently been making my Chain Beat, my Playing Chain Beat series that will be continuing, and it will be happening on whatever days I have available to work on that. I will be probably having a show for that tomorrow. However, it will be separate from my Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual show, the one that I'm doing right now and that you guys are watching. I don't know why. And I will also be continuing to do deck profiles, including my Stupid Deck of the Month for April, brought to you by my very own Vanilla Bryce, and also some openings, including Hidden Arsenal 7, and those will be on separate things, and most of my discussion will be happening on the Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual show. So that's the channel update. Also, if you go to my channel page, you will notice that I am almost at 100 subscribers, and that's huge. I mean, that's almost the size of the average Portland area regional. Like, crazy stuff there. And since I promised to do a contest a while back having to do with special editions, I may be starting a contest as soon as I get to 100 subscribers, hint, hint. So get your friends in on this, and I might be giving out some packs. I'll be getting up to you guys with the rules on that in not too long. So let's talk about Elemental Dragons, the deck that everybody's getting their pants in a knot about. Is it really that hard to get around? Well, let's look at a couple of the cards involved. Let's start with traps. Traps seem to be really popular anti-meta things, as I talked about recently in my 4 Traps of the Apocalypse video. I think that there are a few traps that could definitely pose a large problem to Elemental Dragons. The first one, the fan favorite Macrocosmos. Will that be any good against them? Well, in my opinion, not really. All they have to do to take out a Macrocosmos, I mean, although it is kind of an issue for them because it makes them deplete their resources faster, all they have to do is discard a blaster with one of the other big Elemental Dragons, and they get the 1-for-1. They basically turn that blaster into an MST because the Macro banishes the other card that they discard, and then they get the search off of it. So I don't think that Macro, while it would be a minor annoyance to them and is a much better card than many others against the rest of the current meta, I don't think Macro would be very useful against them. There is, on the other hand, Macro's little brother, Soul Drain. Soul Drain would actually be very useful against Chaos Dragons. Wow, I'm like 3 formats too late on that one. Against Elemental Dragons. Now, Soul Drain, as opposed to Macrocosmos, actually hits their effects, which means that if they tried to get rid of it with Blaster, they wouldn't get the effect of the other Elemental Dragon. Furthermore, they wouldn't get the effects of the Elemental Dragons that they remove from play to summon their monsters from the graveyard. Not only that, but they wouldn't be able to summon those monsters from the graveyard anyway, since they can't activate effects from the graveyard. Soul Drain would be a very good option against them and would slow them down quite a bit. Another card that would actually have its major advantages over Soul Drain, because while Soul Drain would be very useful against Elemental Dragons, it's not as good against the rest of the meta. While it does pose its own problems against things like Mermail, it isn't that big of an issue against Prophecy. However, Soul Drain has another cousin in the form of a trap card we know as Imperial Iron Wall that is actually an extremely versatile card to use against the entire meta. Why is it? Well, first, it does serve its purpose of killing the elemental dragons. Why? Well, because if your opponent can't banish cards, then they can't do Gold Sark, they can't do Sword of the Seven Stars, and they can't summon their E-Dragons except with the Babies effects. So Imperial Iron Wall would actually be very good against your elemental dragons. However, it isn't only good against elemental dragons, and that's its great advantage as a trap card in siding it against the deck, is that it would also serve protection for any of your decks, like, say, Mermail, for instance, would be greatly helped by Imperial Iron Wall. Any other deck that uses the graveyard and is afraid of Macrocosmos will be able to use Imperial Iron Wall as protection, but it also serves as a weapon against Prophecy. So Imperial Iron Wall will be a very good side deck. However, the problem with all three of these traps is the fact that, yes, they are all traps, which means that they are subject to MST, they are subject to Blaster, and they are subject to Royal Decree, which means that you are going to be very vulnerable trying to defend yourself with continuous trap cards. There's just so much back row hate in the game right now, particularly in Elemental Dragon deck, that basically has the capacity to run 6 MSTs as well as Decree, and that's not even counting Dust Tornadoes. So traps historically have not been very reliable protection in this kind of format. However, there are some monsters that can accomplish similar things. Fossil Dyna is going to suddenly be used extremely often, and cards of its sort, say Archlord Christia. I mean, even though agents aren't very good right now, Archlord Christia can actually be used in Monarchs, if you care to do so, and Vanity's Fiend, although I think Vanity's Fiend would be better for Monarchs. I digress. Fossil Dyna, Jowgen the Spiritualist, and then there's a little card that Prophecy is already starting to use, Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, because Kaiku's effect is you can't remove cards from either, or your opponent can't remove cards from either player's grave, which means that it does work against Prophecy, and it also does work against Elemental Dragons. While it doesn't keep them from removing from play monsters with things like the Sword of the Seven Stars, or, Gold Sark, it does have the advantage of keeping them from being able to use their own summoning effects. The issue with it, although it is a monster, is that it can be taken down just by your opponent using one of the baby dragons. So those cards are very effective side decks against Elemental Dragons, and they also serve a couple of purposes against other decks, say Fossil Dyna against Mono Mermail. The issue with all of these side deck cards that I have presented so far is what do you do to stop them from going off on you turn 1 if you didn't get to go first? Well, first there's Max C. Since the Lad combo is going to be something that you're going to have to deplete your resources to get rid of, it is a good thing to have a lot of cards in your hand. Max C can do that for you on your opponent's first turn. In an Elemental Dragon deck, if they are going to try and go for the Dragossack combo, you're going to get tons of cards. If you Max C against them, either they will go off on you with the Dragossack combo, at which point you can just use up a bunch of resources to get rid of the Lad, or they're going to stop their play right there in order to keep you from getting your draw, which allows you to set up your first turn plays. Another interesting card that I've been looking at is Chaos Hunter. Since I believe 2 of the E-Dragons that they're going to be using are too small to get over Chaos Hunter, if they summon one of those during their turn, you can discard a card from your hand, summon the Chaos Hunter, and then they can't remove from play cards at all, which means that it will be even less likely that they will be able to get their Dragossack combo off on you. If they do, that kind of sucks, because then the Chaos Hunter becomes a -2. Another thing that I have been looking at is Flying Sea, the card that's coming out in, I believe, Judgment of the Light. Although that's going to take you a while, if you really are desperate for a card to side against them, that will be a good thing to use since it stops the Dragossack combo. In Lord of Tachyon Galaxy, we are also getting an exclusive Trifortress Tops that will keep them from killing you if they go off on turn 2. However, it doesn't keep them from putting Lad on the board, and that's the major issue for the deck. So Maxi, Chaos Hunter, Kaiku, Fossil Dyna, and a whole ton of traps are all things that can take down Chaos Dragons with the right amount of care. So if you can put those things into your deck, which I'm about to discuss with rogue deck theory, you're going to be okay, I think. And like I said at the beginning of the video, rogue decks are actually going to be decent for the rest of this format, and let me talk about why. So as you recall from a couple of my videos previously, rogue decks really are pretty easy to create. All you need in order to make a successful rogue deck, a successful deck in general, you need a way of generating advantage, you need a way of keeping consistency, and you need a win condition. Those are the only things that you need to be able to do to make a deck. In order to make a rogue deck that's successful against the current meta, all you have to do is be able to do those three things: counter current strategies and defend yourself from current strategies. So if you were to make a deck in this current format, you would have to be able to keep your opponent from special summoning a ton of monsters. You would have to probably be able to use something like Macro or Soul Drain, and you'd have to have a little bit of speed in order to set up your plays very early. Why is that such good news for rogue decks this format? Well, because A, there are a lot of rogue decks that are very fast this format. You have things like Wind-Ups, you have Samurai, and a few others that I can't think of at the moment. Things like Dino Rabbit, I suppose, counts. These are all very fast decks, and the interesting thing about them is they can all run things like D-Fissure and Soul Drain, and even Macrocosmos in some cases. I think Samurai are going to be especially good this format, simply because their ability to get a Beast or Barkion on the field very early, the ability to put Shien on the board early, or even, if you open with the Gateway United thing, a first-turn Shockmaster. Now, being able to make a first-turn Shockmaster is essential to making a rogue deck this format. First-turn Shockmaster, while not absolutely necessary, is devastating against the current meta, because pretty much every deck that you're going to fight against is going to have one strategy that they're going to need to be able to use their turn 1. If you've got Elemental Dragons, you can put the Shockmaster on the board, use its effect, call monster effects, they can't do anything. Use it against Prophecy, call spell. They can't do anything except maybe summon High Priestess, and of course if you're going to be running Shockmaster, chances are you're running a deck that has... Sorry, I'm getting massive hiccups right now. Chances are you're going to be running a deck that has decent amounts of back row to back you up. Not to mention the fact that there is a new engine going on around the current rogue deck meta-y thing, which is the macro engine. I refer you to Mega Capital G's video about it. Basically, you have macro and skill drain and monsters that are beaters that can act nicely under macro and skill drain and get you an engine, and it is very anti-meta, it's generally pretty consistent, and it can be splashed into a ton of decks. I think the reason why I was so successful with my Thunder deck last weekend is because it followed all the requirements of competitive rogue deck theory, the fact that it could make Shockmaster early, the fact that it could run macro, and if need be, it could side in a lot of the cards that would be necessary for, say, Elemental Dragons or another rogue deck. So if you want to make a rogue deck this format, it's actually relatively easy to counter the current meta if you can create protection for the cards that you need to beat them, and if you can move relatively quickly, which a lot of rogue decks this format can do. So it's really good news for us that we have such a diversity of rogue decks that can be successful in this format, even with things like Spellbook Judgment Day coming out and the Elemental Dragons. So I am going to be doing another set of discussions about Chain Beat in the next week. I'm also hopefully going to be doing a couple of openings in the next week and a deck profile for the Stupid Deck of the Month for April. So look forward to that, and until I can get to that, I have to lean forward and do this really awkward thing where I restart my computer, and until my next video, this is the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.